Um, Welcome everyone to the Salt Lake Expositor with Gene Judson, Randy Watts, and Megan Connor. Welcome, you guys.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Always
Be here.
an extreme pleasure to be with these two people.
Yeah, so Brad Wilcox on a secret recording laid out what's the new thing that's going to happen with the youth in the church. And does anybody have a video of that or the audio portion?
I've got something lined up. I just wanted to tell everyone, I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. This was a great holiday for me, and I hope it was for you. I know we jump into the pool instantly, but I just wanted to wish everybody luck as they prepare for the holidays, Christmas. I'm going a little nuts, but just in the effort of I guess getting it off my shoulders, I'm going crazy trying to get ready for Christmas. Just want you to know that. So if I speak unintelligibly or suddenly break into speaking with the gift of tongues, it's simply because I'm a little crazy trying to get ready for Christmas. I went to plug my Christmas tree in and it doesn't freaking light up, and I don't know how to fix it.
Oh, that's super annoying. I'm sorry.
Maybe it's your bad karma that you hate Christmas. It's giving you back your energy.
That's interesting. I told Amanda, or I think she listened to what I was saying the other day. And she quizzed me a little bit about, do I really hate Christmas? I don't hate the idea of Christmas. I don't hate the holiday itself. I just hate the commercialism. And it drives me crazy that the minute Halloween things go up in the store, they start clearing shelves for Christmas too. And the only goal that people have for Christmas is to sell, and get as much money as they can. It reminds me of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints hoarding all the money they can. Screw the idea of Christmas and what it's all about. Let's collect money.
Maybe you can write a reverse Scrooge play. Sort of a new twist on it.
Right. I go from, wait, wouldn't that be the same?
So
Christmas.
It's just, we're not going to solve the issue right now. I just mean that somehow get people's, the commercialization to just turn to loving humanity. That's all, instead of just a commercialization. So we can end it at that.
There's been a lot of things going on for sure in the news that we're going to talk to you about. I know, Gene, you jump right into the deep end of the pool and start going, and me, I'm like introducing stuff and trying to be kind of flowing into it, and Megan's wisely sitting there watching us operate with all these amazing thoughts in her head. But that's why we all work together so well, because
let's work together.
Gene's the white meat of the turkey, I'm the dark meat of the turkey, and Megan is the wishbone of the turkey.
I'll take it. It's better than the giblets or something.
Yeah. Well, that's another story. But you know what? We had a little powwow this week about what we wanted to discuss. And as always, we try to discuss the things that are most impacting the members, that are concerning, and what maybe we as individuals or groups can do about it. And this week it's about, I think our first story is about Brad Wilcox. He's at it again,
He's the gift that keeps on giving.
Right? Yeah.
Cold.
Giving his elementary style commentary on things. He acts like he's speaking to a group of primary children. And he was recorded in this particular meeting that he didn't really know he was being recorded, but some of the things he says are ridiculous. And we'll point those out as we go. If any of you want to stop the recording during his speaking. I actually, we're going to once again feature Megan Hayes, who is just on top of things when it comes to reporting. And we'll play her clip with this. And let me just line this up and share it, because
And I'll say that all of this is prefaced on the fact that Jesus he's basically walking to your house down the street. He's almost here. And the youth have to be prepared for Jesus' coming, just like the youth was prepared 10 years ago. And when Megan was a child, she was going to usher in Jesus, and my generation was going to be the chosen generation to bring Jesus. And Joseph Smith was the whole idea of the Latter-day Saints was because Jesus was right around the corner. And
Any minute.
Any minute. And so Jesus, either his clock isn't synchronized with our clocks or something's wrong. They got to get that tech worked out. You think the Salt Lake Expositor is on Mormon Standard Time. Jesus is the premier.
Well, there's a time difference.
Back $2,000 that I owe you in 2,000 years because I'm on Jesus Standard Time.
There's a big time difference between Spokane, Washington, and Kolob, and I'm sure probably where you guys live too. There's a big time difference because of the time zone that Kolob is in. So yeah, there's a little mix up there, but it's like, I read an article yesterday that there's supposed to be a big nova explosion. I can't remember the name of the star that's getting ready to explode, but one scientist had the audacity to say it'll happen any day now. Well, we've been expecting it to happen for the last who knows how many years, and they said in the article that it could explode anytime within the next 10,000 years. But when it does, when this supernova appears, it'll change the sky for years and years. And I think it's funny that some people jump the gun, and that's what I truly believe the LDS Church is doing. They're jumping the gun for two reasons. Number one, they're all excited about it happening. Number two, they think that if they can instill a fear into the members, that they'll say, oh, Christ is coming. Let's get our tithing caught up. Let's make sure we're worthy. And, when I was a deacon, they were saying it was going to happen any minute. One of the 70s who made an appearance in a big regional fireside we had told us that as teachers in the priesthood, we would see the second coming of Christ. And, it's not like I'm a young pup. I've got, if I'm extremely healthy, 10 or 20 years left, and I'm not really expecting that it's going to happen. I hate to be a doubting Thomas, but
that's right. The church has records of patriarchal blessings going back hundreds of years. And over 100 years ago, lots and lots of people were promised to see Jesus come back, and they all died. And so
my grandpa was one of those.
People, there you go. And your grandpa, well, he's seen Jesus now, maybe.
He probably has. If Jesus is real, he has seen Jesus because he died in 1984.
See, so the promise was, but the promise was probably that he would see him in the flesh on earth.
Yes. The promise was that he would live to see Jesus's resurrection.
There you go.
Well, does Jesus hang out in the spirit world, or do we have to wait until
nightclubs?
Well, the legend is if you are righteous, then you get to be greeted by Jesus and immediately taken into his presence. You only have to go to spirit prison if you're not faithful. So,
and just to correct the record, in case any believing people, Megan didn't mean Jesus's resurrection, because we all know that Jesus is already resurrected. She meant the second coming, his
Oh,
appearance.
the second coming. That's right. Yeah. My Mormon brain cells are dying, and I'm grateful to have the space for other things.
Okay, well, let me.
Anyway, Brad Wilcox, everybody.
Okay, you know what? We'll just do this here. Let's rock and roll with this. And this didn't surprise me, and it probably doesn't surprise anyone, but listen carefully to what Brad is actually saying in this message.
Good morning, everyone. For your special report today, let's go to a video from the YouTube channel Rise Zion to talk about a broadcast they entitled Brad Wilcox Confirms Big Changes Are Coming, leaked audio from youth leadership meeting. This is their description. The quiet youth revolution in the church has begun, and almost nobody knows about it. Welcome back to Rise Zion, my friends. My name is Seth, and I hope you're having a powerful and spirit-filled Wednesday. Today's episode may be one of the most important and most unexpected videos we've ever done on this channel. Buckle up. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is undergoing massive prophetic behind-the-scenes changes, and the youth are at the very center of it. A rare Spanish audio transcript from a private training with Elder Brad Wilcox, recorded after he was released from the Young Men General Presidency, reveals upcoming shifts so bold they caught even me off guard. These are not rumors. These are not social media exaggerations. These are firsthand insights straight from leadership-level training, and they paint a picture of a church preparing urgently for the second coming of Jesus Christ. This isn't administrative tinkering. This is the Lord accelerating his work, reshaping bishoprics, refocusing leadership on the youth, and preparing a spiritually powerful generation capable of living the higher and holier law. There's more to the description. Those are just the really explosive parts. Now, I am not going to play any of the parts where Seth talks. Let's get into this astonishing leaked video, and keep in mind, Seth's video has almost 70,000 views. That's how exciting it is.
Now, the bishops, stake presidents, others have had to learn that they needed to be able to have the Relief Society presidencies and the Elders Quorum presidencies step up. Because traditionally, culturally, we had turned our bishops into professional counselors, or not professional counselors, but they were doing counseling.
I am 100% not sure why Brad is saying this as if it's in the past tense. Mormon bishops are still looked at by most members as counselors. Matter of fact, many members believe that bishops are better than counselors because they have discernment. Discernment in the LDS context refers to the divinely granted spiritual ability to perceive the true nature, motives, or spiritual condition of a person, situation, or course of action. It is often believed to be a special spiritual gift or manifestation of the Holy Ghost, particularly active in those holding priesthood keys.
I was at a training with Elder Cook, and he said, bishops, how many of you are counseling for over half the time that you're doing work in your calling? And all the hands went up.
Why? Because Mormons' mental health is struggling, and bishops are obviously not equipped to help members heal. They are likely making things worse. A bishop, often lacking psychological or psychiatric training, is trained to look for a spiritual cause like sin, lack of faith, or disobedience. And they then prescribe spiritual solutions like prayer, fasting, increased scripture study, repentance. And when these fixes don't actually facilitate change, the member is left with a devastating secondary conclusion that their failure to heal is evidence of their spiritual deficiency.
And he said, and how many of you are still counseling the same people that the last bishop was counseling? And all the hands went up. And he said, in a very apostolic, kind way, he said, knock it off. He said, stop it. He said, you have got to start being the guardrail at the top of the hill for the youth, and not the ambulance at the bottom of the hill for the adults.
OMG, the things that leaders say when they don't think they are being recorded. Brad should know better by now. He is implicitly telling hundreds of overwhelmed bishops that the chronic recurring mental health crises is their fault for continuing to engage with it. He ignores the fact that the entire LDS cultural structure trains members to view the bishop as the only legitimate source of spiritual or emotional counsel. He is blaming the first responders, the bishops, for the endless endless stream of emergencies, the members, caused by the faulty road design. The institutional culture. The church's own policies and rhetoric created the exact conditions that force bishops to spend half their time counseling the same recurring members. His analogy implies preventing problems before they start, which is a key pastoral goal. But what are the guardrails in the church? They are strict obedience, absolute clarity on doctrine, and high behavioral standards. When these guardrails fail, as they often do, the fall is catastrophic. The church is responsible for designing the guardrails, and their current design often fails the most vulnerable. The adults who end up at the bottom of the hill are often the people whose emotional and mental health issues were ignored, misdiagnosed, or compounded during their youth by those same guardrails. The recurring counselees are typically victims of the system's previous failures. They are the people whose clinical depression was diagnosed as lack of faith 20 years ago. Brad is happily passing along the command for bishops to abandon the injured adults in favor of focusing exclusively on preventative measures for the youth. This is an institutional prioritization that tells the most wounded and suffering adult members, your chronic pain is an inefficient use of the bishop's time.
Not that the adults' problems and issues aren't important, but there are others who can take care of those. There are Relief Society presidencies who can deal with welfare needs. There are Elders Quorum presidencies who can deal with pornography counseling.
Stop. Elders Quorum presidencies should not be involved in the sexual health of the members. First off, pornography addiction is not a recognized diagnosis in the DSM-5, and research from BYU indicates that the negative effects of pornography on relationship anxiety are not caused by the actual level of use, but rather by an individual's religious beliefs that lead them to label themselves as addicted, causing shame and fear of rejection. The key takeaway is that the individual's self-perception of addiction is far more damaging than the behavior itself. And
You're muted, Randy.
I almost had that transition perfect, and then I screwed it up. Here's what really bothers me about this particular thing that she just said, is that I'm sure we've all grown up and we know those families and parents. Anytime there's any kind of a hiccup or speed bump, it's like, let's go to the bishop. Let's go to the bishop. I'm going to tell the bishop you're doing this, you're doing that. And the church has discouraged. What if the bishop said, you need to seek professional counseling? Left it at that.
Well, I will tell you, I have so many thoughts about this because I was one of those members that, my parents did this and taught us kids to do it. If you have a problem, you go to the bishop. If you have a confession, you go to the bishop. If you're having, problems in your relationship, you go to the bishop. And when I was having severe issues in my marriage, it was a coercive control situation. My bishop, who actually was one of the really good bishops, cautioned me about going to therapy and said that I needed to be very, very careful and to make sure that I chose a therapist that was affiliated with the church, because he told me that, therapists have all kinds of weird ideas about what they think is going to be good for your mental health. And it turns out that, sometimes they have crazy ideas. For example, there was a member apparently in a marriage, and this is, my bishop shared this with me. He did not tell me the name of the member, but he used this as an example of why I should be careful about going to a therapist. He said there was a couple that came to him and they were having problems because the man wanted intimacy more often than the woman did. And their marriage counselor counseled the man that he should watch porn and pleasure himself rather than burdening his wife with his needs. Now, I don't think that that's probably how exactly it was worded in the therapy session, but it's not bad advice that if your needs are not compatible with your partner's, that you find a healthy way to get those needs met rather than putting the burden on your primary relationship. But my bishop was framing that as something very dangerous because we all know how Mormons feel about porn. So, it makes me simultaneously angry and frustrated that Brad Wilcox is trying to shame bishops who are trying to counsel members, because members are trained to go to their bishops when they have an issue. And for the bishops to then turn and say, well, I'm not a counselor, but also don't go to therapy. What are members supposed to do when they have genuine struggles then?
I can't agree with you more, Megan. And it's first of all, the church is terrified that people are going to go to professionals like Natasha Helfer, for example, who is so amazing and tells the truth, tells it how it actually is, instead of opening the bishop's manual and saying what she should say when someone says, hey, I have a problem with masturbation. The church is scared to death that these professional people are going to say something that doesn't align with the church's doctrine, in my humble opinion.
Well, I think the main reason that church leadership is terrified of therapy is because when people are truly autonomous, they don't need the church anymore. They don't need someone to tell them how sick they are and then provide the solution for them. And that's why the church is terrified of real therapy, because what you then find is that you're a healthy human being. You're not inherently sinful, and that you don't really need the church to back you up for all of that. So that's, I think, what the church is mainly terrified of, is that mental health professionals often recommend that if something is causing you distress, that you take a break from it. And that includes church. It includes relationships. It includes all kinds of unhealthy dynamics. And I think that's the bottom line.
Amen to that. What do you think, Gene?
Yeah, I think the church wants you to go see someone like Jody Hildebrandt, as Jesse Roblin says.
Yep.
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
That'll solve all your problems.
They're approved counselors, because what they want you to do really is they want you to go to a faith-affirming therapist. And the bottom line is that no therapist can be both faith-affirming and ethical in their practice. And that's the exact problem that Natasha Helfer ran up against, is that she either had to teach what was ethical and what was science-based according to self-pleasure, or she had to go against her faith. Well, she had to go against her faith to teach what was science-based and ethical. So if she wanted to teach faithful principles, then she couldn't teach scientific principles. And as a therapist, you have a duty to the licensing board. You took an oath that said that you would, do no harm, and that you would help people in the way that was the healthiest for them. And sometimes stepping away from your religion is that healthy thing, or teaching people that what your religion teaches isn't healthy. And I think that's really what they're most scared of. They know that what they teach is not mentally or emotionally healthy.
Amen to that.
Second,
Julie-
the Elders
Julie
Quorum
Hanks, sorry.
presidency members.
Oh, sorry, Megan, what?
I just caught this comment that Lisa Bite Me said Dr. Hanks had that problem too, Julie Hanks as well.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Heaven forbid these counselors and therapists should teach the truth rather than seek the gospel doctrine before they give advice.
Are almost certainly untrained laymen. They are businessmen, mechanics, or teachers, etc., who have no professional training in addiction counseling, trauma recovery,
know
or
layman was a
motivational interviewing. Delegating this highly personal and deeply shameful issue from a single bishop who is bound by at least some degree of spiritual confidentiality to an entire Elders Quorum presidency also increases the risk of the problem becoming widely known.
There are Relief Society and Elders Quorum leaders who can deal with marriage counseling.
Absolutely not. Marriage counseling is fundamentally about neutrality, boundary setting, and creating a safe space for both partners to express dissatisfaction. Elders Quorum and Relief Society leaders cannot provide this neutrality. Both Elders Quorum and Relief Society leaders are responsible for reporting up the leadership chain regarding the spiritual standing and activity of the couple. Their primary objective is the retention retention of the marriage within the church and compliance with temple standards. This goal often conflicts directly with the therapeutic goal of helping the individuals achieve emotional health, which may, in some cases, require separation or divorce.
Yeah, so here we go again. Seriously? Marriage counseling? Don't go to an outside person who's trained in this. Go to someone who will keep you within the chains of the church doctrine. And this just really frustrates me. Marriage counseling, really? And he just comes out and says it.
Yes,
Heaven
exactly.
forbid a couple having issues, especially when the church is involved at all. They go to their elders quorum president or Relief Society president, really? That bugs me.
Well, the Elders
A
Quorum
marriage
president and the Relief
therapist-
Society president also are not trained. So
Exactly.
I'm not sure why he's making a distinction between an untrained bishop and an untrained other leader of the church who also doesn't have enough time to be counseling members, nor should they be, because they're not trained.
Well, and they may be having the same problems in their marriage.
So yeah, if
I mean-
NASA needs to solve a problem and they can't do it with one janitor, they just bring another janitor in.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like, I mean, I've known a lot of elders quorum presidents and have been one myself, and none of them have a perfect marriage. So who are they? You know, it's like if you're trying to drop weight, you go to a fitness instructor who weighs about 450 pounds and doesn't exercise. That's exactly how it seems to me. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt actually. And it's disgusting to me that they wrap their chain, the church, around these members to make sure. And we had, was it Russell Nelson? Who was it that said, if you seek counsel, be sure and seek it within the gospel. Go to someone who's a member of the church.
He said, don't take counsel from unbelievers.
Exactly. That's what I say.
Spends thousands of hours studying complex dynamics. Relief Society and Elders Quorum leaders, again, are simply lay volunteers. The most dangerous consequence of this specific bit of Brad's advice is the inability to screen for or appropriately manage domestic violence, emotional abuse, or financial control. A Relief Society or Elders Quorum leader is not trained to spot subtle patterns of abuse or to ensure the safety of the victim during counseling sessions. They may inadvertently encourage the victim to stay and sustain or forgive the abuser for the sake of the eternal family unit.
I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen that don't require the bishop's keys. He needs to hear confessions. But as Ahmed Corbett used to put it, that makes him the judge in Israel and not the parole officer. He doesn't have to follow up with weekly or multi-weekly visits with everybody who's needing help, because there are others who can be called and others who have responsibilities that they can step in.
I'd be okay if the standard practice of bishop confessions went away as well, as that judge in Israel role is precisely what draws clinical crises to an unqualified desk. The system needs not just a better organizational chart, but a fundamental shift that directs complex mental health problems outside the lay clergy and into the hands of licensed professionals.
We just got it approved right before we got released that the language in the handbook is now going to say 4-day camp is expected. 4 days, 3 nights. We were trying to get it to be 5, but we had to compromise a little bit. But 4 days. There are many states that aren't doing 4-day camps. They're doing a day, a night, a day. They're doing maybe 3 days and 2 nights. In fact, the church campsites like it to be shorter because then they can fit more states in. But now the presiding bishopric, and I'm so excited about our new apostle. Oh my gosh, he is the coolest guy ever. You guys are going to love him. He said, to the young men and the young women present, he said, you make it part of the program, and we will buy the camps. We will buy the camps. You make it the program. He says, right now, it's not stated the length of time these camps should be. And
Okay. What am I missing here? Because growing up in the church, I don't understand what he's saying, these camps. We had a fathers and sons outing. That was it, once a year. What is he saying, these camps? Can someone enlighten me?
So I'll tell you that I think the church is going to the, church camp, like band camp or something like that, or the born again youths for Jesus type camps. And so I think that's what they're trying to instill.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't heard about this, but I think it's, first of all, it's super random to jump from, mental health issues of couples and bishops counseling to youth camps, complaining that the youth are not going to enough camps when they've done away with just about every other youth activity that there is. And, definitely it's another indoctrination tactic. Youth conference was a thing when I was a kid. We had a weekend youth conference twice a year, and then we had girls camp once a year that was a 4-day camp. And so, yeah, I mean, it's another indoctrination thing. It's another way to give youth some leadership responsibilities, which when you do that, it makes them buy in a little bit more and want to be a part of the leadership as they get older. And so, yeah, I think it's just another way to indoctrinate youth.
You guys, it's so cool. This apostle is awesome. He sounds like what he is. He sounds like a real idiot. He's trying to come across as being spiritually knowledgeable, and yet he's trying to bring himself down to the level of the layman who's in this meeting. And,
yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know layman was a bishop. That's super cool. I always
Randy,
thought he was a bad
are you calling
guy.
Brad a spiritual butt kisser?
Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, yes, I am calling him a real butt kisser. Whatever it takes to make himself sound cool.
he says, we just are going by the demand, and it's supply and demand. But he said, you make it part of the program, and we will get the camps for you. And so it's there now. If the language is actually in handbook language now, and we can start giving those kids at a camp, at a youth conference, we can start giving them more of that FSY experience.
You will have to imagine my surprise that the Mormon Church, seemingly without missing a single beat, agrees to buy land for camps without any specifics about how much land that might be or how much it might cost. Next, Brad will discuss the For the Strength of Youth pamphlet.
This is not a book of rules. This is a book of reasons for the rules. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to help young people step up to a higher law. Now, the Israelites had a heck of a time with a higher law. Moses got them out of Egypt, but he was having a hard time getting Egypt out of them.
Claiming the church's standards are a book of reasons rather than a book of rules is a semantic game designed to bypass modern concerns about autonomy. In practice, the church's standards are rules, and they are enforced via worthiness interviews, which determine access to key ordinances like the temple. If you break the reasons, you lose your recommend. The reasons language is a psychological tool used to make members internalize the rules as self-improvement rather than institutional compliance. It teaches young people that if they feel a rule is difficult, the failure lies in their inability to grasp the profound reason, not in the rule's arbitrary nature or restrictive demands. This stifles healthy questioning and promotes unquestioning obedience.
And so they needed a preparatory law. They needed a preparatory priesthood. And so they got a preparatory law. And then Jesus came, thank you, and said, Moses' law, thou shalt not kill. Jesus says, don't even be angry. Well, I'm glad I can kill him now. It does not say that I can't kill him.
Leave it up to Brad to make a stupid joke about murder.
Higher laws. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Don't even let lust enter your heart. Well, I'm glad I can commit adultery now.
I think that listening to this, I have just boiled down one of the main reasons that Brad drives me crazy. His choice of humor and his immediate simplification of the spiritual laws demonstrates a lack of intellectual respect for his audience. By treating the comparison between the Mosaic and Christian laws as a platform for trivializing jokes, he avoids the opportunity to engage the audience's higher level thinking about self-control, desire, and internal motivation. The entire delivery suggests the belief that the audience requires crude, simplified comic relief to absorb fundamental doctrine, rather than serious, mature engagement with the higher law being taught. To me, he comes off as superior, and I don't like it.
I mean, you start realizing when this came out, and Elder Ruppert introduced it in conference, what was it, about 2 years ago? But when it came out, my friend, his son came home from high school and said, "Dad, I'm getting a tattoo." His dad said, "Why would you do that?" He says, "Because Elder Ruppert said it's okay." He says, "And when did Elder Ruppert say that?" "In General Conference." His dad said, "How do you know? You didn't even listen to General Conference." And he said, "Well, it's all over the internet, all over social media." And his dad said, "Oh, that's such a good idea. Let's listen to social media and not listen to prophets." Oh, that.
Can he jump around anymore on subjects? And what the hell is he focusing on? He's losing me. We go from let the bishops have more time by having the elders quorum presidents and relief societies take over the marriage counseling, and we're going to have camps that are hopefully 5 days, and this cool apostle is going to buy them for us. And can we have a tattoo? Well, is it me? Maybe it's my ADHD. I don't know.
Well, I think this is one of those instances when, you've got a leader, church leader, who's kind of talking in a fireside format, off the cuff. He's probably got some talking points that he needs to cover. But also, I think it was maybe strategic of burying the land purchase underneath talking about counseling, 4-day camps, and now tattoos. Everybody missed this subtlety of, by the way, we're going to be buying a lot more land. And the reason that we're doing that is so that the youth can go to longer camps. Also, can I just say, I think Brad Wilcox is a psychological tool. And I agree with Megan Hayes. I am already tired of listening to his condescension. I'm annoyed by him. He talks to people like they're idiots.
Yeah.
We should do a show where we talk to Brad like he's an idiot, and we just give him back his own medicine.
Yeah, and you're right, Megan. He is definitely a tool.
That's a great idea.
If I had never met Brad and this story was my first interaction with him, I would think that he doesn't care for youth, but thinks they are stupid and need to be mocked.
No, it's not a great idea. He said, "Don't you think you should listen to Elder Ruppert?" They watched the talk, and what did he say? He said right here, "The purpose of For the Strength of Youth is not to give you a yes or no about every possible choice you might face. Instead, the Lord is inviting you to live in a higher and holier way, His way."
I not so lovingly call this psychological game Guess the Unspoken Rule. I know it well because I was raised playing it with my dad. The church wants to look progressive by removing the explicit rules and encouraging youth to be guided by the Holy Ghost and higher principles. Brad's story immediately destroys the autonomy that the pamphlet grants. He quotes the principle and then weaponizes the lack of a rule against the youth. Now, where does it say you can get a tattoo? It doesn't say that. Doing this creates a psychological double bind. Since the official guide doesn't explicitly forbid the tattoo and also doesn't explicitly allow it, the only way to prove you are living the higher and holier way is to choose the most conservative and restrictive interpretation, the old unspoken rule that still exists in the culture. The ambiguity becomes a spiritual test.
Now, where does it say you can get a tattoo? It doesn't say that. Yeah, but it doesn't say you shouldn't get a tattoo. Yeah, but you're stepping it up. A higher, holier way. We're trying to live a higher law.
here is a video from my childhood with the same vibe. My dad is holding the camera, and my oldest brother is the one who gets caught breaking the Sabbath.
Okay, I just want to say that I got a stomach ache when she showed this little home video, because and I don't in any way want to criticize Megan's father, but this is so typical of so many LDS parents, and no wonder we grew up confused. I'll play it now, but oh my gosh.
What did I catch him doing?
On the bridge.
I thought we already discussed that.
I thought you said it was all right.
I never said it was all right, did I? I said for you to make your own decision, didn't I?
And then when I went in the kitchen, you said that it wasn't too bad and it was all right.
Well, we got it on tape. Here's Dan breaking the Sabbath day with Chris Davis. I'm going to show it to all the guys at church. Building the bridge. Yeah.
Well, when you went in there, you said it wasn't too bad.
I didn't say it was good, though, did I? You made your own decision. You didn't break the Sabbath. It's up to you. Look at this pigsty. He thinks it's clean. Huh? I would suggest that you don't do it and find something else to do.
Jesus came not to destroy.
Really? So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts, Megan?
My thoughts are that I want to turn off the video and go find that kid and give him a hug and tell him that his dad's an asshole.
Yeah.
And you said, I don't want to criticize Megan Hayes' dad. Well, I will, because I had parents that were similar to that too. My parents used these tactics, and guess where they learned them? In church, from the church leaders. The tactic of shaming a kid, of giving them an ambiguous answer to something and then shaming them for the choice that they make, is a supreme form of gaslighting. It's a supreme form of coercive control. You don't tell the kid that something is wrong. You tell them to make their own choice. But when they do make the choice, you tell them that they chose wrong. Well, you didn't set the expectation clearly in the first place. And so that is a form of psychological manipulation. It is coercive control, and it is sick, and it is disgusting, and is what so many members of the church do because they learn it from the church leadership. And this For the Strength of Youth pamphlet is a prime example of that. It's exactly what Megan Hayes is saying. They're taking away the specificity from the rules, and then they're trying to catch you with the ambiguity of it, and then tell you that you're not faithful enough unless you read their minds and pick the answer that they were thinking of. You cannot win this game. This is an unwinnable psychological game.
You know, the leaders only got it from the Old Testament God, you know.
Well,
right, and to
yes,
have the
I mean,
audacity to tell this kid, Megan's brother, that he's going to show this video to the bishop.
yeah, again, it's a shame-based culture. You did something wrong. Now I'm going to go tell everybody about it, and I'm going to use that shame. I'm going to weaponize it so that you will have learned your lesson and you won't do it again. And guess what? It's a message for all your future decisions. You better choose the right decision, because if you don't, you're going to face more shame and more manipulation and more control.
That's right. The corollary is you can pray whether what we say is true, but keep on praying until you get confirmation it's true, because there's no other answer.
Right. Like if you don't get the same answer that the leadership of the church did, then you're obviously not faithful enough, or you're not praying right, or you're not praying hard enough. And let's not just point out how awful and terrible this is. Let's point out what would be the most healthy way to parent a child like this, who comes to you and says with a sincere question, Dad, I want to work on my bridge, but I'm worried about it because I know we've talked about keeping the Sabbath day holy. A loving father would say, I don't think it's a good idea to work on your bridge, because I do believe that that's breaking the Sabbath day. The choice is up to you. I personally wouldn't do it. Then if Dad comes in and finds him working on his bridge, he should say to his son, how do you feel about the choice that you've made? Do you feel like this is a right choice? Because if you do feel okay about it, I just want to affirm that that's good, because you have the personal autonomy to make the choices that align with your personal values, not the ones that align with my values. Because as parents, it is not our job to make sure that our children follow our values. It is our job to help them learn how to develop their own set of values and then stay true to those values.
And there are a lot of things a kid could be doing a hell of a lot worse than working on a little project at his desk in his room on Sunday.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
That's right. Now go and look at the internet and type in the word Mormon, son.
Unbelievable.
Destroy the lower law, not to take it away, but to fulfill it. When I teach youth, I say that means he's trying to help you live the lower law in a more fulfilling way, a way that includes your desires, your motivations, and not just your behavior.
Summed up, the instruction therefore becomes: fulfill the law by changing your behavior and changing your internal motivation. This is a profound psychological burden. If a person abstains from coffee but still desires it, they have failed the higher law. Instead of resolving conflict, Brad's teaching forces individuals to engage in intense, exhausting self-suppression and self-loathing until the natural desire itself is extinguished and replaced by institutionally acceptable motivations. This is not fulfillment. It is coercive internal conformity.
So it's time to start living principles in a more fulfilling way. How do you deal with being part of that perfectionistic church? I mean, your church has such high standards and they expect you to keep those standards like all the time. And if you don't, they like shame you in your culture because you always have to be perfect. How do you deal with that?
Brad can't be bothered to engage with the legitimate pain and high expectations in the Mormon church that cause burnout. So instead, he attempts to shame the critics by making their concerns sound childish and exaggerated. The most ethically corrosive part of this maneuver is that the exaggerated caricature he is mocking is, for vast numbers of high-demand members, an accurate description of their lived experience. By performing this mocking routine, Brad is effectively telling every member in the audience who feels this pressure that their pain is not real, but merely an immature complaint.
Jesus Christ will help you.
Is that a good answer? How do you deal with that? Jesus Christ will help me. How do you argue with that?
What a perfect example of spiritual gaslighting. Brad attempts to shut down critical thinking by appealing to the highest possible authority, Jesus Christ, and framing any further objection as a lack of faith.
So why do you go to church? Why do you go on a mission? Why do you pay tithing? Why do you do these things?
Because I love God and my neighbor.
Is that a good answer? Because I love God and I love others. Very short, succinct principles that become the reason for the rule.
Here,
Gross.
Brad and his chosen audience member are reframing complex, costly, and difficult behaviors into the two most non-controversial and universal Christian principles: love God and love others. By doing this, the church, via Brad, ensures that the member never views tithing as a tax, a mission as a burden, or church attendance as a chore. Instead, the member is trained to see any failure to comply as a failure to love God and neighbor.
Okay, so why don't you look at pornography? Everybody knows that it's just harmless adult entertainment. So why don't you view pornography? I mean, everybody else does. And the health books say it's good for you. It's healthy. It's sex education. So why don't you view pornography?
Because I want to walk in God's light.
Good answer. Because I want to walk in God's light.
Brad disgusts me. He is taking a nuanced advocacy argument that pornography should be studied and discussed as a modern sexual phenomenon and twisting it into absurd claims to make the secular viewpoint sound ridiculous. By mocking these claims, Brad avoids having to provide an evidence-based defense for the church's restrictive policy and instead retreats to the spiritually safe harbor of walking into God's light.
So why do you live the life of chastity? And why do you live the word of wisdom? I mean, why don't you smoke and drink and vape? Why don't you sleep around before you get married? Because you never buy a car if you haven't test drive it. And so, why do you live this way? My body is sacred. Because my body is sacred. There's a reason for the rule.
Brad's mocking tone reveals a deep contempt and disgust for any worldview that prioritizes personal agency, modern science, or secular values over institutional compliance. The mocking tone is the spiritual equivalent of an eye roll, demonstrating that Brad views any worldview not anchored in institutional obedience as inherently primitive, silly, and contemptible. It's a psychological tactic to ensure the audience laughs at the dissenters rather than seriously considering their differing perspectives.
So why don't you cheat?
I don't know why this grosses me out so much, but don't these kids sound like indoctrinated robots giving the answer that they think Brad would like to hear?
Yes, because that's what we're trained to do as youth. We are trained to suck up to the leaders and to comply and to give the textbook answers that they expect us to give. And I remember as a youth having a Sunday school teacher that was somewhat cool. You know, we thought he was the cool one. He was a brand new return missionary. He was a little bit younger and more hip. He was the one that told us the name of Elohim, you know, rather than trying to keep it a secret. And, but I remember in his class allowing some of my cynicism and sarcasm to take over because I felt a little bit more comfortable with him than I did with some of the older Sunday school teachers that I had. And I remember saying to him at one point, why do you keep asking us the same questions over and over again? And he said, they're not the same questions. They're different questions. And I said, no, they're not. They're all the same question. And they all have the same 5 answers. Pray, read your scriptures, pay your tithing, attend your meetings, and accept all your callings. Those are the 5 answers that we keep saying those same things every single time you ask us a question. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the Apostle Paul or the second coming. They're the same 5 answers. And he was like, you know what? You actually have a good point. And so he then had the challenge of trying to make our Sunday school lessons a little bit more nuanced and different, because from that point on, everybody in the class, anytime he asked us a question, we would just go like this: 5, 5, 5. Yeah. It was the same 5 answers all the time, you know, and the only reason that I stayed in Mormonism so long is because of my family's expectations and my desire to feel acceptable to my parents. But this is what Mormon kids are trained to do. They're trained to regurgitate the answers that they think the person wants to hear without doing any kind of critical thinking and without giving any pushback to a leader like this, who clearly is trying to shame them into compliance. And it's really, really disgusting.
Won't it be great once Brad is an ex-Mormon and he'll do a podcast and he'll say, hey, Mormon church, why don't you cheat on your taxes?
Right. Yeah, if
Why
I
don't
knew
you starve
then,
poor people? Or
back when I was a youth in the gospel, if I knew what I know now, it's just my way, Megan, like you said, it's in your nature. I would raise my hand and say, actually, you know, and he's like, why don't you drink coffee? Why don't you smoke? I would say, well, I drink coffee like it's going out of frickin' style. And I vape like a madman. I love weed. And, you know, that's what I would say. I wish that I hadn't have been so indoctrinated back in my youth that I too would give the, you know, one of the 5. But yeah, live and learn, I guess, huh?
Why don't you cheat at school?
Hey, Randy.
I mean, everybody knows that if you're going to.
Yes.
I just have one more thing to add. If these youth were honest with Brad, what they probably would be more likely to answer is that they're scared to death to not keep these commandments. They're scared to death to not toe the Mormon line, because if they do, it means losing their community, their friends, their family members. It means losing the respect of the people that they love and respect. It means losing your worldview and your identity. And it means stepping into the unknown, where the church has told us is an incredibly scary place where we will encounter darkness and despair, and where our lives will be miserable. That's what the real honest answer should be.
You're so right. When I was growing up, I thought the worst possible thing that could ever happen to anyone is to be excommunicated from the church, to be humiliated and embarrassed. Missionaries that were sent home, I thought, that's a fate worse than death. I just can't imagine how humiliated I'd be because of that very thing that you're saying, Megan. I was scared to death.
I was very much taught that leaving the church equaled ruining your life
And the lives of those around you.
and the lives of your entire posterity.
Right. Yeah.
Get a good job, you have to get a good college, and you can only get into college if you have a good GPA and good test scores. And the only way you can get those is by cheating. So it's kind of expected that AI will write your papers and the AI will do your homework, because that's just expected in our culture to get good grades. So why don't you cheat?
Truth will make you free.
Because the truth will set you free.
For many who experience a faith crisis, the primary reason for their struggle is the perception that the church has not been entirely honest about its history, finances, or doctrinal changes. The church often promotes its own form of selective honesty or faithful memory. When Brad uses "truth will make you free" to condemn academic cheating, he is promoting an ethical standard that many former members feel the institution itself has failed to uphold in its own historical narratives. The audience is told to be transparent and honest in a university setting, but they are simultaneously expected to ignore or dismiss historical facts that challenge the institutional narrative.
I hope we can help young people. You'll see that in coming years, this will take a much more central place in the program.
Brad, there are a ton of things the church could do to help youth, and the things you listed are not them. The church can significantly improve its support for youth by recognizing that the issues Brad listed are symptoms of a system that undermines the youth's agency and spiritual health. To correct this, the institution must immediately make 3 structural shifts. It must stop using ambiguous higher and holier way principles as a tool to enforce strict unspoken conservative compliance. It must genuinely affirm youth agency by teaching that making conscience-based choices is an act of faith rather than mocking those who seek personal autonomy. And most critically, it must cease relying on untrained lay clergy for complex clinical issues, instead establishing mandatory, funded referral networks to professional mental health care to ensure youth receive healing and are not subjected to the shame and blame cycle that compounds their crises.
We could have some of those youth talk about their ministering experiences. What ministering experiences? That's another thing, people. Brethren, how did you learn to home teach? How did you learn that? Who did you go with? Dad, your uncle, a brother from the Lord. And that's how you learn to go into a house where people did not want you there.
Hey, Randy, I was wondering if we could maybe just move on to some other stories now. We kind of got the gist of the fact that, the youth have been told due to the second coming that the standards are going to change, and they're all the other things. And this is combined with the lowering of the sister missionaries. Everybody's taken that as like, oh, Jesus is coming. Every time something happens, there's that happens. And so are you okay with putting an end to this story and moving on to the next?
Sure. We got through it mostly anyway.
Yeah.
It was about to end.
Yeah. So anyhow, there's another person that's in the story in the news for the last week and a half. And who is that, Megan?
Oh, good old Elder Christofferson.
Yeah.
And his brother, who was arrested on SA charges. And I believe Yeah, Wade. I believe since you share a common name with Wade, this is your story. Is that right?
So I have something to share. We talked about it last week, right? And let's see if I can find it. So go ahead, Randy. You can say whatever you want to say about it too, and I'll find this episode that I was going to get.
Oh, I didn't really have anything necessarily to contribute, but I will say that the most disgusting thing about what you're about to hear is that, and this is so typical. This is just typically the way. Todd Christofferson's brother, Wade, who is a certified, arrested, excommunicated, rehired, if you will, essaying children constantly, had the audacity to stand up and say how embarrassed he was that his
So you want me to
brother.
play that?
Oh, I thought that's
Yes,
what you were going to
please.
play. Yeah.
That's what I'm going to play. So instead of saying what he's going to say, we'll just have him
Let him say it.
him say it.
You know, Tom had come out as being gay, was divorced and out of the church. And I was just mad, upset, angry, and thought, how can you betray our family?
That was the Chimo speaking right there. That was the SA guy that was speaking.
Yes, that was because, you know, it's worse to be gay than to do something to someone without their permission.
Well, let's be honest. It's worse to publicly humiliate the family. So at this point, he probably was perpetrating all of the things he's now been arrested for, but he hadn't been caught yet. And so the brother who was leaving the church, who was divorced and now came out as gay, had disgraced the family by publicly, denouncing this Mormon
right?
lifestyle. But because Wade's sins were still in private, that was okay. Noted.
Yeah.
And he's
So
repented for his sins.
Well, and this is the other thing that I have such a huge problem with is that if an abuser goes to a bishop and confesses, the bishop's response is to call the hotline where the attorneys are going to say, don't report it. And the next thing that they do is start the repentance process with the offender, which means maybe they will lose their calling, but maybe they won't, depending on the bishop, depending on the calling. And it also means that the bishop is going to meet regularly with this man to see what steps they're taking to correct their behavior. In the meantime, they could still probably be perpetrating that behavior behind the scenes and just pretending to work through the repentance process. But nonetheless, let's pretend for a second that the offender does work through the repentance process. All that means is that he met with his bishop for a subscribed period of time. He prayed, he read his scriptures, he probably took the sacrament and, confessed to God. Then what happens? Well, this offender has received no punishment, no psychological, reformatting, shall we say, no help for the problem of his attraction. And now he's passed the repentance process. So now he's eligible for any calling in the church. In fact, sometimes these people get then promoted to leadership positions because they've been willing to go through the repentance process and prove themselves faithful and worthy. So what happens to the majority of child abusers in the church? They go through the repentance process, they stay in the church, and they stay in church leadership. And then nobody knows that they're an offender because that's between the bishop and the individual. It's between the individual and God. it's not something that we should ever reveal publicly because this person has repented.
Megan, let me ask you this. Wade was excommunicated for doing this very same thing earlier. And then they found him worthy to be rebaptized, like you said. And then he was called to high and holy positions where he was dealing with children again. How does that happen? Why would they sweep it under the rug and the notations were taken off of his membership records? How does that happen?
Well, it's exactly the process that I just described. He repented. They found him worthy to be rebaptized. They scrub his record and they let him come back in because they believe that Jesus has changed his heart. So never mind the fact that we have to enter into some dark psychology to understand why men would do this to children. Never mind that it's against the law and he should be in jail. That's the thing that I can't get past. The understanding is that, the church leadership believe that somebody who has broken the law, rather than being held accountable legally, that they should just repent and be given a pass. Then that should all be fine, right?
And we have
Yeah,
to
Gene, do you think that his brother being an apostle had anything to do with his membership records being cleansed?
I have a feeling that it could have, and we have to thank Floodlit for exposing this originally, and then all the ex-Mormon content creators for publicizing it, because it wasn't for a few days that they the news media actually picked up and did it, and probably because the church was encouraging them to sit on the story until there was actual news, whatever that meant, which meant maybe the charges were actually filed instead of just holding somebody accused of something, right? Pre-filing the charges or whatever. And then I saw a meme where it's like Apostle's brother gets arrested on like half a dozen, whatever channels. And then the Deseret News says, man from Ohio gets arrested in Utah. Oh, some just random man from Ohio.
Yeah, don't mention the name.
Why is that a headline? Right. And so, yes, all those things are part of the problem. And Rebecca Biblioteca has been wondering what D. Todd Christofferson has been doing to protect his children from his brother. Right? Maybe he's been doing things to protect his children from his brother, but has been doing things to put other children at risk if he's been part of the problem to let him be reinstated and etc.
Yeah, that's the speculation, is that, if D. Todd Christofferson knew about his brother's offenses and kept it secret in order to preserve his reputation, then he was putting other children at risk, which is gross. If he didn't say anything to his own family, he was putting his own children and nieces and nephews and grandchildren at risk, which is even worse. And, just the whole fact that if he did any of that, it was definitely to protect his own reputation and the reputation of the church above protecting children. But guys, why are we surprised? This is what the church does. They don't care about children. They don't care about protecting children. They care about protecting their image and protecting their finances, and that's it.
Exactly. And let me tell you, if this man was, who knows how many children he violated before he was caught the first time. It could be, dozens. And he was caught and was excommunicated. And let me tell you, the only reason he ever showed any sorrow was because he was caught. If he hadn't been caught, he'd keep going. Well, guess what? It wasn't enough to be excommunicated, because once he was rebaptized, there was no change. He kept going. And we have written evidence of that.
And Randy, to your point, who knows how many? The only way we'll know is if people who have been SA'd by him feel safe to tell their story. And how does one feel safe? Is if you hear about others expressing the same experience, right? And I think he was charged with there's two affected children at first, and then because it was publicized and floodlit.org was putting the word out, Floodlit got contacted by more people saying, yeah, he did it to me too. And Floodlit was probably saying, well, then go to contact the police, contact the FBI, contact these people so that the whole story gets out. That's the only way the whole story gets out. John DeLynn, I've heard him say that sunshine is the best disinfectant. And so the only way that this problem can be rooted out of the church, and it never will be fully, but at least where more and more people are protected, is by informing people of the problems, by putting everything out there so that people can understand what's going on and what the consequences are.
And as a survivor of SA, I can tell you that the only way that people will come forward to talk about their experiences is if they are likely to be believed and protected. And those two things have to be in place. And that's one of the reasons why more victims don't come forward, specifically in the Mormon Church, is because while there's a chance they might be believed by some trusted adults, they are not going to ever be protected. Not ever, unless their parents remove them from the church.
Right. And some people might believe, but not everyone will believe, Megan, right? Even some people close to you still won't believe, no matter how much evidence is put out there.
Exactly. Because the people who disbelieve survivors, generally speaking, have something to lose if the survivor's story is true. And that's the reason why there are so many people out there who say we shouldn't believe all victims, we shouldn't believe all survivors. They put out these false statistics about fake reports of SA in order to obfuscate from the truth, when the reality is, and I will continue to say this until people know it, learn it, and understand it, and I keep checking up on it to make sure the statistics have not changed. But when a person reports SA, the likelihood that it is a false report is about 6% of the time. And when a person reports it to law enforcement, that figure drops down to 3%.
Right, because it's a crime to falsely report a crime.
Right. So believe all victims first, and then verify.
And Megan, you are such a valuable resource when talking about this, and it breaks my heart that you passed through the things that you passed through, but you definitely speak with a firsthand knowledge. As a matter of fact, Megan, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you do know, wrote a book about her experiences. And if you haven't read it, it's well worth the read. Megan, what was the name of your book?
It's called I Walked Through Fire to Get Here. And thank you, Randy. I appreciate that.
You bet. Absolutely. What do you think, guys? Do we have anything else that we want to bring up as far as a topic? Or have we come to the end of our joy session this week?
That's right. And people could comment in the comments in the chat if there's topics that they think should be discussed, if we're aware of it, or you could join the show. I will post.
I do have one other story that I wanted to show. Now, it's not necessarily related to Mormonism, but this is the Salt Lake Expositor, and this issue happened near the Salt Lake area. And the reason I want to bring it forward is because it's another instance in which children were endangered and the adults in the room made a lot of dumb decisions. So this is a story that I've actually been following because about a month ago, this father and his 3 kids were rescued from Big Cottonwood Canyon after he took them on a long hike. Now, there are lots of hikes you can go on in Big Cottonwood Canyon. And if you go to alltrails.com, you can find out which ones are appropriate for your skill level. You can go on lots and lots of easy hikes in that area. Well, this father did not take his children on an easy hike. He took them on a difficult hike in bad weather conditions. They started out around 9 o'clock in the morning. And I think he had either texted or sent pictures to his wife that they had summited somewhere around 6 p.m. Weather conditions were bad, and they were trying to descend, and he realized that they were in trouble. And so they were rescued a day after going missing. And there was a GoFundMe page that went out, and they were touting this father as a hero for saving his family's lives. But what ended up happening is that 2 of the children were taken to the hospital in critical condition. The man and his 3rd child were in stable condition. And basically they said he was later described on a GoFundMe page as having, quote, bravely sacrificed himself to protect his children. Well, what he actually did was built a very rudimentary shelter where he hid the children near a rock, and there were some other sticks and rocks involved in trying to protect them from snow. And now he's facing multiple charges of aggravated child abuse and child torture. He's being held without bail. And basically, during the 24-hour ordeal, the kids said that they were cold, tired, they wanted to go home. And the documents allege that this man was ill-prepared and selfish and displayed odd behavior and a lack of concern for his children when rescue services arrived. There was apparently mist, fog, rain, and hail happening at the time around 8 p.m. when he went to go seek help for his kids. And tragically, the 2-year-old son, his heart, he stopped breathing, and the father performed CPR until he began breathing on his own, but then he abandoned his children to go look for help. And the 8-year-old child then had to perform CPR on the 2-year-old the 4-year-old, because the 4-year-old had also stopped breathing. So after they were rescued, the 4-year-old underwent about 25 minutes of CPR and remains in the hospital where he suffered a stroke and had a portion of his skull removed due to edema. And then police alleged that a video found on the man's phone captured from the day of the hike shows the 8-year-old asking, "Are we going to freeze to death, Daddy?" So this man apparently admitted that he wasn't as familiar with the trail as he should have been. But, I'm just thinking about the stunning lack of, care and concern for his children. I'm not sure what was going through his mind, but to take your 8-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2-year-old on a hike that ended up lasting 9 hours before you even got to the top of the mountain, that's pretty ridiculous,
And the worst part of it is that these kids will probably still look at their daddy as a real hero.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we've talked about this before, about how when your parents do terrible things, even when it puts you in physical harm or danger, that it's really hard for kids to even see that they've done anything wrong. But that poor 8-year-old, being left alone with their 2 siblings and having to perform CPR on the 4-year-old, one of the kids' core body temperatures was 86 degrees when they were found. This is absolutely insane for this dad to do that. So I'll be interested to when they release the charging documents, to see what they're talking about when they say that he was exhibiting odd behavior and that he seemed to have a lack of concern for his kids. What was going through this guy's mind?
No knowledge of whether he's LDS or not.
No, we don't know. His last name is Smith, but that doesn't mean much. I don't want to, I don't want to speculate that he could possibly be Mormon if he's not, Um, if he was, though, I could imagine a scenario in which he would have prayed to ask for help and like, how do I help my kids? And got the answer that he should leave them and go search for help. But, even if he isn't Mormon, this is a situation where children were endangered and the adults obviously didn't do, what they should have done in the situation. I think if I was the mom, I would probably have called police when he called at 6 p.m. to say that they had summited finally and that they were, they were stuck in bad weather. I probably would have called it in at that point. So I don't know where mom was or what mom was doing either, or what the family dynamics were there. But the whole thing just screams of unhealthy all the way around.
Vibes of Jody Hildebrand.
Yes.
How parents can do this to their children, I will never understand and I will never know. But it sure breaks my heart. And remember, all of us, if we see something that doesn't look right or seems a little off, don't tell a bishop, don't tell a stake president. Go to floodlit.org or the police, because otherwise, it'll be swept under the carpet and kids will continue to suffer.
Yeah,
And
if I
that's
had
what
been a
we can do.
hiker on this trail, seeing a dad with 3 young children on a hike that's hard even for adults, I probably would have contacted authorities if I had seen that. There have been many times when I have witnessed child abuse happening in public, and I do report it. I think the 911 operators probably recognize my number when I call in because I call so often. Not just for things like that, but also, if I see someone stranded on the side of the road, or if I see an accident happen or something like that, I'm always reporting things because, I would want someone to do that for me if I was in a situation like that. And I wish that people witnessing me as a child in abusive situations would have said something, and the adults did not. So
you're waiting
that's
to see
probably why.
if the charging documents include a statement by the father saying he was looking for a ram to be in the thicket.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, usually what happens is when they finally release the charging documents, which is after they've finalized the charges and they've decided how they're going to prosecute him, they'll usually release charging documents. And that's usually statements from police officers or other law enforcement who were there at the time. And they will give a statement regarding what questions they asked the father, the conditions of the children, their statements. And so, yeah, I'm interested to know what did the father tell the rescuers and the police, at this time? Why were they out there? What was he doing with them? That's the kind of stuff that I want to know.
That's right. And what's the mother's testimony? Why did she let
Right.
her under 3-year-old go on any hike? I was in the middle of summer. I was in Yosemite, and I was 3, and they were just going to go on a little hike, and I wasn't allowed to go. Now, it's probably because they thought I would slow them down or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But still, it's possible some safety was considered for me being a young person. Maybe I would, you don't know if a young person's going to, slip off the edge of the hiking trail or something like that. So there you go.
Yeah, and I've seen plenty of hikers out there with, babies in carriers, the backpack carriers and whatever, but never on a trail that is this hard. Generally you see them in the national parks on some of the trails that are a little less difficult because they want to see some pretty stuff and whatever. But so there's nothing wrong with taking a 2-year-old on a hike, but which hike, in which conditions, and all of that kind of stuff. It seems really shady to me that this dad says that he was unfamiliar with the trail, just decided to go on a hike without, knowing anything about the trail. I don't buy that.
And thank you, Kinder Kim. That's good advice. And in the spirit of Salt Lake Expositor, we would encourage you, if you see something, say something. Like
Yeah.
Kiki says, it doesn't matter if it
Oh,
turns
just
out
call
to
me
be
Kim said it.
I'm sorry, just call me Kim. I saw Kim there. Yeah.
Right.
See
And like
something, do
Kiki said,
something.
okay, there you go. So, and Kiki said you can't be held.
No penalty for
You can't
reporting.
be guilty for anything by reporting it, even if it's turns out to be not untoward. At least you did your part to report.
Right.
And I think that's
kind of what we're doing here. We're
well,
reporting
that's our
things in good
purpose.
faith.
Yeah. Before we go, if we are ready, unless any of you have something else, I just had a quick note from Jesus Christ that I thought you might all appreciate.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to have to, can I take yours off, Megan?
Oh, yeah.
Well, if it's from Jesus, it's probably going to be 2,000 years from now before we hear anything.
Sorry, I'm trying to stop my screen. There we go. Oh,
okay.
Jesus at LDS conference. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw it, but he spoke in LDS conference, and this is what he had to say.
And I say unto you, tithe the poor, create shell companies, and invest billions into stocks. Just kidding. That's evil.
Wow.
Just wanted to share that with you.
There you go. And that's good. A good lesson for Jesus. I think he was tongue in cheek there. But here's another thing, thanks to Megan, that if you're a church member and you're thinking about paying tithing,
the Lord does not need your money.
There you go.
There you go.
That is true. He does not need your money.
We got to get that one in on every episode until
yeah,
that's like as honest
until the second coming.
As honest as he could be, right?
That's right. As honest as he knows how to be.
Yeah.
Jesse Roblin is asking, is search and rescue free in the United States? Sometimes, Jesse. Sometimes it is. However, in many areas, if there are known perils, you can get fined a pretty hefty fine for needing search and rescue. And this is one of those situations where this dad should have known that his kids were not up to this type of a hike, and he should have been fined. For example, here in San Antonio, where we have a lot of low water crossings, and people know about flash flooding, and there are plenty of flash flood alerts. If you go into a low water crossing and get stuck there, they can charge you up to, or they can fine you up to $1,000 to pull you out of there. Not to mention that, you're probably your vehicle will be totaled as well. But there are a lot of hiking places where you can get fined a hefty fine and be charged with a crime if you need to be rescued in a situation like that.
True that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In Arizona, in the desert, idiots kept trying to cross these flash floods in their vehicles, thinking, I got to get there. I got to get there. And then, of course, they'd have to be rescued. So they did start charging him.
Yeah.
Because they're telling everybody, don't try to cross through a flash flood. And I did it one time on my way to a Toby Keith concert. So it was justified, but at least I didn't get stuck.
Well, I mean, the thing to remember is that in most areas, if you have a weather phenomenon that's typical to your area, there are going to be plenty of warnings out there. I think a lot of the problem is people coming in from other places. When I first moved to Texas, I had no idea what a flash flood was. And I had no idea how dangerous it was to drive in the rain here. So there definitely are situations where people aren't aware, but that's really ignorance is no excuse, right? So.
Amen. Well, I will just tell every one of you who are listening how much we appreciate you. And I sure love and appreciate Megan, Connor, and Jean Judson as my co-hosts,
Team
partners in
members.
crime. We really enjoy bringing to you some of this information and gleaning information from what you all have to say. And, not to be too cliche, but be sure and like the video if you enjoyed it on all of our channels. That would be greatly appreciated. We appreciate. How many times can I say appreciate? Anyway, thank you. Thank you a lot. Anything else from y'all?
Yeah, thank you, Randy, and thank you, Jean. Thanks for always, collaborating on the things that are important, keeping children safe, and I appreciate the work that you guys do as well.
And I'll also mention that Nemo the Mormon came out with a episode 3 or so weeks ago, and they talked about how Sarah Delaney, the one woman, how she changed the Mormon Church in Great Britain by helping them do the right thing as far as safety goes for people that need it.
Yeah, I listened to that episode. It was a really great one, and I'm really grateful for the work that they're doing as well.
And so tomorrow's Monday, and it's probably going to be family night.
Yes, it will be family night. We also just released our episode on the new name ceremony in the temple. That was last Tuesday, I believe. So we're going back to Thursdays now, and this coming Thursday will be the big one. The big endowment ceremony will be on Thursday. And then on my own channel, my Third Verse channel, just in an hour or so, little over an hour and 20 minutes, I'll be releasing an episode on the dangers of AI psychosis.
I cracked up at your last video with Kiki doing your impersonation of Jeff Goldblum. It was spot on. I loved it.
We thought people were going to come at us for it being bad impersonations, but sometimes we have questions, and I'm not sure that I'm quite ready for the handshakes.
And I want to direct everybody to Momo Nomo. He's starting a series on, well, you talk about it.
Okay, well, great.
Series is, and tell us where they can get it. I'll try to look up a link to your last show. And
I've actually got a link to it. Thank you.
Okay. Throw it right up there in the chat then.
I'll just put it in the chat here, but I had a very enlightening show regarding transgender children coming up in the church, parents who deal with that. And in my video, I don't know if they're both people that both Jean and I have interviewed. One is Samantha. We'll just leave it at her first name, from Mourn with Those Who Mourned. And Kate Hendrick from, well, she's got a few channels, but what is it? Life Take Two. Anyway,
a Mormon and a non-Mormon walk into a bar. What's that one called?
Well, they do that show. Yes. And it's Two Nomos is the channel that's on, but it's really an enlightening video. It's heartbreaking, but it's also enlightening. Kate was asked to be on Good Morning America with David Archuleta. And because of that, and that's just spreading great information to the nation. And so it went over so well, this interview, that we're going to make it a series. And we'll probably have at least 2 more shows, because we didn't get through near what we wanted to get through in an hour and a half. So
that's
but
right.
I'd love it if you'd click on the link there. It says Latter Daily Digest and Momo Nomo, but please click on that link and take a look at it. I think you'll enjoy the show.
Yeah. And Latter Daily Digest is going to interview Richie Stedman, who was the Cultural Hall that caused Cultural Hall to sort of change his thing in the middle of of his show. And then, but anyhow, he was the original Cultural Hall, this Richie Stedman guy. So that's coming up later this week. All right.
Good one.
Thanks everybody for watching. Have a great rest of 2025, which is shortly going to be 2026. And we'll see what happens. All right. Bye-bye.
Love you all.
Good night.